Welcome to Housewarming, a fine line documentary series where we're looking at the connections between artists and art buyers. Today we're going to be checking out the studio space of Kyla Yager, and I'm joined by Peter Boggs, who has purchased work from Kyla before. We're going to be talking about Kyla's work, which is intricate, colorful, and also informed by her experience with ADHD. So I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, let's get started. Hi, how's it going? Good to see you. Hi.
Good seeing you.
I love this entire wall. It's so cool how you have all these tiny little pieces and some bigger ones. And I feel like there's I know it's really colorful, but there's a bit of a theme going on with some more greens going on here.
Yeah, I mean, my color palette changes like the wind, but I love to Tetris all my work and see which pieces look good together. And I made this little frame area actually just last night, which was quite fun. But I have a few pieces up there that are collected. And honestly, a lot of the pieces that I collect from other artists are big inspiration, but also intertwining like my ADHD and sexuality within my work has been a huge theme lately. So it's a lot of those pieces over there are inspired by my demisexuality as well.
Wow.
So why is the eye so prominent in everything you do? Because that's what attracted me to the one. But as I look at the wall, everything has variations on eyes as the cornerstone.
That is a very good question. So the eyeball is sort of like the key to my work, and you can see it in two different ways. You can either see it as an eye of empathy or an eye of judgment, depending on how you look at it. So some people who really take the time to look at my work and connect with it and let themselves be vulnerable with the work, those are eyes of empathy that are, working interchangeably. But then when people sort of just walk past or just like, whatever, then that's eyes of judgment. And that's how I feel like I'm perceived as a neurodivergent person, as someone with ADHD, is that sometimes people pass me with eyes of judgment. But the people who pass me with eyes of empathy and tend to stick around and support me in ways that are important to me as a human. So I like to bring people in with those eyes of empathy and allow the safe space to just be your genuine self in front of art.
Okay, this wall seems really eclectic. Like you've got some little knickknacks going on here, little tiny like easels, which are so adorable, a little coffee cup. Is there any kind of story behind this wall, or like what was your intention with like, this kind of vibe?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of shelving in my space because it's normally filled with art supplies, but I just kind of utilize this like windowsill just to kind of put a lot of more personal things.
Yeah. What about that one up there? Like it looks, is that yours?
Yeah, the tiny one. That was my pre-COVID style, so mostly just like geometric abstraction, very hyper detailed, but definitely like I knew what it would look like when it would be done. And all of my work now, I don't know what it's going to look like nor what it's about until it's done.
How did you go from there to here, and over what time frame? And was it just a rapid cut from one to another, or I'm interested in how you progress, because I've seen other artists have different techniques and then they change during time.
Yeah, I think I definitely wouldn't have gotten to this style if I didn't have all the mini adventures and experimentations in between. So I actually, I can show you a little jar, not a little jar, a big jar I have. This is paint peel collected since 2020.
Oh, wow.
So every time my paint dries my palette, it is very fun to pick the paint off of your palette. If you haven't tried it, even if you're not a painter, just go get yourself a palette and some paint and then to pick it off when it dries. But I would utilize it with Mod Podge as like a base layer on my paintings and then paint over it and do little details and give it some texture. I was also playing with paint pouring around the same time, and by playing with the medium in that kind of way, that got me to think about different kinds of textures being used, which brought me to my fidget fine art, which is like tactile art you can touch and feel. You can go ahead and touch it if you want. Where I was experimenting with hot glue. So my work went like in two different directions with the tactile and the texture. And then when it came to like the figures being in my work and my background in realism, mental health was like a big thing during the pandemic. And so summer 2020, I made some abstract pieces, and then I made some pieces that had blind contour drawings of faces and like some other. I actually have a piece that's a perfect example, but it's in a gallery right now, which is great.
Yeah,
but
that's good. We like to do that.
It's basically I kept making work about my mental health and about how I was feeling, and these just subconscious things kept falling into those abstract paintings. And then over time, I just sort of understood what I was doing and was becoming more self-aware. Therapy also helps. And I really started to understand and have more intention around the pieces I was making, and it wasn't just random.
Yeah.
But I paint intuitively, so it just kind of happens. And when I'm done, I think about it and I reflect, and I'm just, that's what that's about. Okay.
Right.
Okay, I get it now.
It's a way to work through things too, right?
Yeah, art really and truly is my therapy. And I feel like, if you can't afford therapy, go paint something. Like
So what's going on here? Is this by you? Because this does not look like anything else in this room.
This is a throwback to 2012, Kyla.
Wow. Okay.
Back when I did realism. This is I used to paint my photography, actually. So I took a picture of a house in New Orleans where I grew up. I don't know if I mentioned that. I grew up in New Orleans. And I painted it in monochromatic grayscale, which was very different than what I'm doing now. And to be honest, most of the work like this is in a storage unit in New Orleans right now. So this is the only one that I currently have here that's from high school.
I'm glad you brought it over, because you can just see this really, really interesting progression, right? Like color and style. I mean, you can see your talent in both of them, but I think it's such an interesting progression happening here. It seems like all your walls tell the story of like where you've gone with your art. Is this where you work mostly? Like, what is this space?
I have multiple spots. So sometimes I'm like on the couch with my lap desk. Sometimes I'm here at the desk. Sometimes I'm on the floor. Sometimes I'm at the easel. It really just kind of depends on the day and my mood, or how much space I have. Like, I don't normally have my space this clean. Thank you for giving me a reason to clean. A lot of times ADHD people need a social motivation in order to clean their spaces. But whichever is an open spot, and depending on the size I'm working on as well, is very important.
I'd love to start out by connecting back to like where you guys first met, like how you came to find Kyla's work. Can you tell me about that?
It was the Riverdale Art Show last year, and still remember Celeste and I, we came in. We go every year to the art show, and you were the very first booth, and from a distance looked at it and went, it looks graffiti-like, and then came in and started seeing the colors, and something connected, and we talked about it a moment ago. The empathy eye connected something with me, and I'll talk about this one. So this is actually the piece that I bought, and I didn't know what it was that captivated me. There's so much going on, but it's really this part that got me. And then as we started talking, you said you painted because you're extreme ADHD. And my son Mitch is also identified as extreme ADHD. And Mitch and I, we get into these conversations, and I can never understand it. For years in school, he struggled. And he would say, I'm fighting against my mind. I've got all this stuff going on in my head. Or he'd go hyper-focused. And I could never visualize or figure out or connect with it. He'd be talking, but the words didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I see this and I go, okay, here's Mitch.
Wow.
Here's his mind. Here's his eye. Here's everything that's flooding into his head. And he's like insanely smart, but doesn't appreciate how smart he is. And he'd been told all through high school in particular, you're lazy, you've got potential, all of this. But when you look at this piece, it goes, a light bulb pops on. And it's like, okay, I get your mind. And this one sits up in my office. In my office, I think I have 7 pieces of different art that mean something. But this is one of the key pieces that sit there because it reminds me of him and conversations we get into. We get into really deep conversations that can go for a couple hours because he'll go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But with a combination of this and an understanding now of ADHD and neurodiversity, as he's explained it all to me, it's made me a better parent to be able to figure out how things fit together. So thank you.
I love that. That really
And,
does.
and
mean
the
a lot.
title is Not Again, because that's very much Mitch.
Yeah.
You can just see him going, struggling with it, putting the mask on so he fits in.
Yeah.
And this just explained it all to me.
Yeah. And it's interesting because every time someone looks at my work, sometimes they ask for the backstory, sometimes they make their own interpretation. I feel like this was a combination of both, because I remember talking to you about what was going through my head when I was making it, but sometimes the stories that someone sees when they see it for the first time, they're different, but they connect. And that was one of those very pure moments where I'm like, it was just really just such a pure, like, this is what my art is supposed to do for people. Like, and it really meant a lot.
Do you want to read?
Yeah. Well, I right before we started filming, Peter asked me to write a description on the back, but not again. This piece is about the feeling of negative things that keep happening in regards to financial strain and neurodivergence. And you're like, ugh, not again. But then you find a way through it. Another fun fact, I think I forgot to mention to you when I sold you the piece, but a lot of my canvases, I like to, reduce, reuse, recycle, but I got from a neighbor some paintings, like from their, I guess, like her kids' paintings. But this piece actually had like a kid's painting underneath it.
God.
And the only part that's...
So it's not a Rembrandt under it.
Well, the only thing that's left under it is this one
Oh my
little area, that lime green. Everything else I covered, but and I think this color too.
Yeah.
But that was left.
There's something.
But it's really interesting because it reminds you of your son, and then like you probably think about when he was a kid, but this was a kid's painting technically.
Huh.
I wonder if you can see it from the light. Yeah, you can't really see it. You can only see the painting I paint, but like.
And I mean, even when you hold it up,
Yeah.
the key thing is the mouth. It's that trying to get your words out, trying to get your expression out. Like I said, there is so much going on in here that you can look at different areas over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's what I really love about your art. You look at it, you called that one spaghetti or pasta.
Noodle dance.
Yeah. And you can look at that over and over again and find something different and unique in it.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part about art.
Yeah. When did you, Kyla, when did your ADHD become a part of your art practice? Was it something you were resisting at some point, or did it also intuitively happen, and was there like a clicking point for you?
It was definitely like a long journey. So when I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 17, so it was in like spring of 2012, my art style shifted from realism to abstract. Like that is what happened. And it also was helpful that I went to a college art college fair in high school, and someone was looking through a sketchbook and saw some of my abstract doodles and was like, you got to make that big.
Oh,
And so I took that advice, and then for my senior show, I made my abstract big. So I made like 4 by 6 foot paintings of all circles.
Wow.
And
Those are big.
they still live in New Orleans.
Yeah.
But over time and through undergrad and doing my BFA in visual art, I did realism classes and I did abstract classes. And I didn't really get the creative freedom to explore that because everything was an assignment.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, I probably perfected my realism. I probably perfected my abstract in a certain way, but it wasn't until COVID that I was able to bring in my realism with my abstract and experiment and play and get to where I am right now. And I don't think I was able to intuitively utilize my ADHD in my art until then.
I think we have a piece from Fine Line here that you wanted to gift to Peter. So yeah, we have something
know
for
that.
you. Yeah, we do.
As a thank you for being an amazing supporter of Kyla Yager Artwork, and it also should go well with the piece that you already have. So
Thank you. You wrote a note on the back too. Collision.
Oh, it does go.
So this piece is called
Wow.
Collision, and I made it in 2020. I actually started making it on my 26th birthday. It was like, that's how I celebrated my birthday because it was during the pandemic. But I finished it a few months later. It's one of those like wait a while for it to brew, and then I finish it when I need to. And it's that collision of ADHD thoughts that are colliding over each other. And this was before the faces were hidden inside. And I thought it was important that you had something that sort of represented the transition of how my style became what it is today, and something that would go well with the one that you already have. So
This is perfect.
yay,
Yeah,
I'm
because
so glad
I
you
didn't
like
see an
it.
eye in it. I'm sitting here going,
Yeah.
okay, I don't get the transition, but yeah, and that's the backstory.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem.
I love hearing
Yeah.
the backstories. I feel like you've shared so much about like the hidden imagery in your work. This is such a great conversation. Yeah. Oh my God, they go perfectly.
They're
all
perfect.
The colors.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
It's almost like, okay, that's inside the brain, this is outside the brain.
Well, thank you both of you for this conversation and sitting down with us. I think we've just learned so much about your practice and your time as a collector, an art collector, and yeah, I just want to thank you for talking with us.
Thank you. This has been fun.
Yeah, so fun. We want to thank Kyla for welcoming us into your home and Peter for having this conversation with us. Be sure to check out Kyla's work on the Fine Line Marketplace. It's really something else. And stay tuned for the next episode.